Welcome back to another episode of Admit It with Alexis White. We are here today with a very, very special guest. Very special because I've known him for quite a long time. We were just saying, like, we're going on how many years now?
I mean, it might be pushing it more than 15.
That's wild. So we're here with Robert Spuhler, who's a very, very special guest. He's been working with my tutoring company for over 15 years now, and handling all things test prep. So he is what I call the SAT ACT guru. I don't know if you love that moniker. Is that would that be the proper term?
It's kind. It's very kind.
The guru. And what's amazing about Robert is that he has weathered all of the different kind of storms of the tests and the changes and the new SAT, the new ACT, the new this, the scoring. So lots of perspective, also lots of experience and history and all that. And Robert is also working with us on the college admissions front because he is a fabulous journalist and writer. So he's working with our students on personal statements. So there's a lot of, you may not think about this, but there's a lot of crossover with, you're putting an application together. So we have the testing, we have the writing, we have the grades. So it's good to have all of the perspective. I'm going to turn it over to you with the question of, how did you get into this? Like, how does one start in the SAT? Was the ACT even a thing, really, when you started?
To a certain extent, it was, but a lot more SAT work in my earlier days. Yeah, when I first moved to LA, I came here because I didn't want to be a journalist anymore. I just wanted to play one on TV. And so I moved to LA to start acting, and I needed a day job. I needed something else to do.
That's wild.
And so back in the day, there was an actor newspaper called Backstage West.
I remember it.
And so in Backstage West, they had a lot of advertisements for day jobs, essentially. A lot of, if a bar was hiring a bartender, restaurant hiring a waiter, they would put an ad in Backstage West sometimes. Yep. I did not have the resume for any of that and would be a legitimately awful waiter, terrible bartender.
I mean, I said yeah as if I know that you would be a bad one. I don't know.
I would be a disaster in any of those roles. But there was a tutoring company that was looking for SAT tutors, and I figured I could probably do that. I did all right on the tests when I was younger, and so I applied and went, and my first students were in January of 2004.
Oh,
so
the good old days.
Yes.
The good old days. That was when I first started too. Mm-hmm. I started the tutoring company probably in 2003. So we're in the same trajectory.
It was a very strange. Those first couple of years were very odd. I definitely got a lot of looks from parents when I would show up because I was 24, I think, but I looked like I was 17. And so there was a lot of people when I would show up to their house that would think that like I was like a friend of their kid, like visiting.
They're like, are you also on the basketball team?
Yeah.
Why are you here tutoring that's funny.
So I got a lot of that in the early days, a lot less now. The gray and the sideburns kind of tells you that. But, but yeah, that was in the early days. That's what I was dealing with. So
going to people's homes in LA, tutoring for the SAT mostly, not so much the ACT. Let's backtrack to, because I think a lot of people don't really know the history of the test and the trajectory and why things are the way they are right now. There's a lot of questions and people DM me and send in emails of like, things have changed so much since my older daughter, so the SAT when we were, I mean, basically we're the same age. Although
somehow you look great and I'm aging like the Crypt Keeper. I don't know what's going on, but
it's not natural. There's a lot of things that go on to do this, including a makeup artist that came to my house this morning at 7 a.m. That's neither here nor there. So the SAT was out of 1600 in my day. Mm-hmm. It is now, but it wasn't always. I also got into UCLA with a 1270 SAT score. He laughs and smiles.
Yep.
And clients of ours will go, wait, but like a 1270 was a good score. I worked very hard for that score. I think I originally had an 1100.
Very nice.
So I was stoked. Now it is shocking that if I tell a student and we'll talk about this a little bit too, about what's a usable or unusable score. Like if a student gets below a 1300, you're like, and even then, mid 1300s for the test optional situation. So what happened? There's the COVID test optional thing. That was later, but the evolution, 1600 goes to, they changed it, right?
Yeah, it went from a 1600 to a 2400 for several years. And that was based on their idea of splitting out the reading from the English.
Okay.
A lot of what the SAT, not everything, but a lot of what the SAT has done over the last 25 years has been rooted on some level in competition. Because the ACT and the SAT are in this kind of never-ending chess match, essentially. It used to be when you and I were going through this, and especially when maybe our parents would have gone through this,
right,
or the generation prior, it was a regional thing almost.
Right.
You took the SAT if you wanted to go to school on the coasts, and you took the ACT if you wanted to go to school in the middle of the country.
Right.
Part of that was geographic, just from where the tests are located. The ACT was based out of Chicago, and the SAT was based out of Princeton, New Jersey. I believe Princeton. Definitely New Jersey. And so because of that, you had this like natural geographic split, and it was almost like two gangs having different areas of a
It's the
city.
West Side Story of test prep
we had
testing.
There was no trying to cross over territories like in the Warriors or anything
Right.
else like that. Nobody trying to get home to Coney Island. But you had two different geographic areas at that time. And over time that started to lessen. That
Right.
started to change. And when that started to change, that's when I think there was a lot more competition between the two tests. And so they would kind of take notes from each other. ACT having 4 sections, where they break each of the scores out into these 4 sections and then average it for composite.
What are the 4 sections?
The 4 sections on the ACT are
Right.
English, reading, math, and science.
Okay. And that's changed also. So
Yeah, that's changed a little bit now because their composite score now on the ACT does not include the science section.
okay. We'll get to that.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing on the ACT side. But so on the SAT side, one of the things that they've kind of had to deal with is like, okay, should we break out the reading and the English into 2 different categories, which they did for a while, and that was the 2400 maximum era.
Breaking out reading in English, what did that look like?
Well, what it meant is that your reading score, it looked a lot more like, honestly, like the ACT. The reading score was based on reading passages.
Okay. Reading comprehension, basically.
Yeah,
okay.
and the English side was more grammar and word and context problems and all of those types of things. So it did come closer to resembling in terms of content the ACT. Now the SAT, when they went to 2400, they also split it out into 10 sections over the test.
Whoa.
Each of
Was
which
it from 4 to 10? Wait. Yeah.
It was, I believe it was from 4 to 10. Yeah.
Because it was like 2 math and then the reading and the...
Yeah, exactly.
What was the difference between the math ones?
There wasn't really much of a difference between the math ones. The math ones had a little bit of a difference in our day because of the quantitative comparison problems.
That's what it was.
And so you had one section that had some math and then the quantitative comparison questions. What they found eventually was that you had students who were not very good at math, who really struggled with math, and would crush the quantitative comparison sections. They would absolutely kill those problems. And the reason why was because they got tutored. The sections were so easy to break logically that it was really something that was affecting, like, people who could afford tutoring were getting a higher score in this section no matter what their math level was, because they could afford the tutoring, because they could afford learning the logic behind the problems to break them down easier.
And that's where we come in, because that's when...
That was what, in the first couple of years, that was one of the big things that we did a lot of, was talk about the logic of those types of problems. And so they came in and they fixed it, and they got rid of those.
Okay.
And so they just broke it out to, then you had 10 sections, 3 of each, and then 1 experimental section on every test.
Why experimental? This always drives me crazy.
The experimental
They don't do that
problems-
anymore, do they?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Not on the SAT as much. On the ACT, they still do. But they don't break it out into sections anymore. They just have certain problems that don't count.
Got it.
And so on the exam, you'll have certain problems that don't count in a way. The reason that they do that is kind of like, we don't have a great explanation necessarily as to why they do that. They're testing future versions of problems on students. So they're kind of throwing in there more problems, and they're saying, okay, like, how do students do with this? If everybody gets it right, it's too easy to put on the test. If everybody gets it wrong, it's too hard to put on the test. And if they get a certain, depending on the percentages they get it right or wrong, they can kind of sit there and can go like, okay, so that should be in like the hard section or the hard part of the math. Like that should be on the ACT, that might be, that should be a 35. Or that should be a 40. And if more people get it right than get it wrong, maybe it's a 20 or a 15.
And you're also, let's just clarify that concept. The problems technically are supposed to get harder.
They get more difficult, especially in the macro sense. They get more difficult. Yeah, in the micro sense, number 6 may not feel any easier than a number 7. And a 42 might feel harder than a 43. Like if you're looking at the tiny differences, that's very much dependent on the student. But a number 5 should always feel easier than a 30.
Got it. Okay, so they made the change to the 2400.
They made the change to the 2400, and then they made another change in COVID years, essentially.
Right.
And in the COVID years, they kind of retracted it a little bit. It was a lot of test. I mean, when we took it, it was nearly 4 hours when we took it.
It was very long. Yeah.
The 2400 version was like 3:30 when you start talking about the writing section. And now it's shrunk to 2:15-ish.
Question. The writing section, that was part of the 2400. That was not part of the original 1600.
That's correct. Yeah, they added it in the 2400 days.
Why? Do you think?
What?
I know you don't work for the College Board. I don't know.
It's sometimes it can be difficult to figure out what the College Board is thinking. But I think that they wanted to add it. I think the impression was they wanted to see students' actual writing ability. Because
I wonder why they would want that.
Yeah, strange how that would work. And they wanted to see the actual writing ability, and they wanted to see. I think a lot of times the SAT is very reactive. And so when you start hearing stories about something that like blow up a little bit about the test, the College Board will sometimes immediately react to that. And I think it was around this time, and everybody's history is a little bit different, and maybe this was just me because I grew up in a very tiny town that did not have would not be able to support SAT tutoring.
Where did you grow up, by the way?
Glenwood Springs, Colorado.
Oh, I didn't know you were a Colorado person.
Yes, Colorado.
Interesting. Okay, so nobody did SAT prep there. That was like not a thing.
That wasn't a thing.
Right.
And when the late 90s, early 2000s, and we started to get a lot more stories about where money could help. Right, what types of tutors you could hire and everything else like that. And that was about the time where I think there was a lot of stories about college essay tutoring and being able to get some help getting your thoughts on paper for college essay tutoring. And I think the SAT kind of saw that and said, oh, one thing we could possibly do is give schools the opportunity to see what a student writes like.
Right, under pressure.
And without a tutor. Because all of a sudden now, what are we looking at when we're looking at these college essays? And so they tried to add that. The problem was it added a completely extra layer to college admissions officers who are already most of the time completely overworked as it is.
Right.
And so like some colleges took advantage of it, but some colleges are sitting there thinking, we've got 18,000 things we're considering already. You want me to read how many essays that were done in 30 minutes on a topic the student didn't even know anything about? What is that even measuring?
Right.
And then you started to see some surveys and some studies and research and everything that showed that basically if you just wrote more, your score was going to go up no matter what you wrote. You started to see some correlations in there that were not great in terms of is this actually measuring someone's writing ability?
It's like a correlation between like height and intelligence, or exactly.
Yeah. There were some things that you were looking at that was just kind of like, this isn't what we wanted to see. This is not giving us what we actually were hoping for in that regard. And so they got rid of that with the move back to 1600.
do we feel like ChatGPT and AI is sort of like the new issue that the testing companies are going to face, and that maybe we're going to see a return of the timed essay on the SAT? Or do you feel like that's something that the colleges are going to start bringing up in there, like as an extra layer of admissions, almost like if you pass the first cut, sort of like the pre-screen, then you're going to have to get in there and type a timed, supervised, I don't know what.
I would be surprised. I think, and I would especially be surprised now, because if this was still when we were going through this, I mean, how many schools did you apply to?
I think I probably applied to like 9, maybe.
I applied to 4.
Okay.
And that was not anything special. That was within the realm of what students were applying to.
Yeah.
How many are your students, your admissions students applying to now?
How many are your admissions students?
I mean, my students right now are in the 15 to 20
so
range.
9 to 12 is what I dream of. But I'm going to say they're with UC schools, if they're doing that, and I count the UC schools as one school. You're looking at 16. Yeah. 16 to some are pushing 20 if they've got a lot of schools that don't have additional writing and they just throw them on there for, just funsies.
I think the number of admissions officers at each school has not kept pace with the number of applications they're getting.
Right.
I don't think there's anywhere in their workflow to be like, now we've got to add another essay read in there.
What if they did? I don't know. I'm deciding that this is my new job.
That's
but
okay.
What if they did? What if there was a standardized extra, not in terms of topic, but almost like the common application where you pass the pre-screen, it unlocks something in your application where you get a random question. So it could be, I'm sure that kids will then start posting it all over Instagram. I got this question. I got that question. What question did you get? That like a generated question that you have to, timed, you have to complete it by, once you log in at 12:01, you have to be done by 12:23 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that all the colleges get that. Is that a thing?
I mean,
do you like that idea?
That could. I mean, it could work, but you're still giving these admissions officers more essays to read. And the good news, I think, about the whole Chat GPT, and I've had a couple students that I've called out for using it on occasion.
Me too.
But the good news is that Chat GPT, it turns out, isn't very good at writing admissions essays.
It's not great.
And so when you get one from it, it is very general. And it's very kind of surface level on everything, including what you want out of a school. The why whatever schools tend to be, the essays that it comes up with, those tend to be really weak. They tend to just be, I like your classes and I want to go to football games. And it's kind of like, okay, no specifics at all then.
Didn't you call it earlier? It's like a LinkedIn, it reads like LinkedIn speak.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a LinkedIn speak to it that I think comes across where it's like, oh, you had 5 words of idea and you're writing a 250 word essay. Yeah. And I think that there's a certain amount of that ChatGPT and AI generally still creates. Now, 5 years from now, who knows? But at this moment, I don't think any of the schools need more information. I think what they will probably do is spend a little bit more time maybe than they have on the essay before. If they just kind of breeze through the essays to see like, oh, can this student put a sentence together or whatever else along those lines, I think now they may spend a little bit more time on the essay portion of the application in looking and going like, okay, are there any does this person actually want to go to this school, or
that's going to be the main thing.
Did they just put this into ChatGPT and give me no reasons why they actually wanted to go to this school? I think that on the essay side, that's what schools may put a higher emphasis on in the AI era.
That you're speaking to something that I'm talking about a lot with people, which is finding the fit. It's really hard to write a great application if the school's not a fit for you, first of all. You're applying there because you think it has a good name, or because your mom went there, or whatever.
Yeah.
And when you don't really know why you want something, you can't really articulate it very well. So that's when we bring in research and making the kids actually do the work. And a lot of times they go like, maybe I don't actually decided I don't really like this school. Okay. Great. Let's take it off the list of 25 schools. That's great.
I think it's really hard to, if you are a student with all of the work that a high school student has in 2025, which I think is more work than I did in high school, certainly. I think it's hard to come up with a list of 20 schools that you actually know you're a fit for. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. There's nothing like it. I don't think that you have to apply to 20 schools, even with all the horror stories about how selective schools are nowadays. The question to me becomes, are you applying to 20 schools because you really have an interest in these different schools and different aspects of them? Or are you applying to 20 schools out of fear? Are you afraid that you're not going to get into a good school and therefore we're just throwing every dart at every wall?
Right. So we don't think that the college admissions people are going to want to have more to read.
Yeah.
That is a crazy idea.
Yeah. As it turns out, I don't think they're going to need another essay along with the Common App essay and whatever supplement essays that the school has. Everything else like that, I think they've got enough information.
Well, especially like a garbagey kind of nonsensical word salad trying to sound smart because they asked me the question 2 seconds ago and I wasn't prepared. Like, it's not like it's an in-class essay that you had a time to actually go through quotes and analyze something. I mean, and I think it's, first of all, I thought it was a brilliant idea in my own head. But now I'm thinking about it and I'm going, this is actually a terrible idea, especially for kids who have performance anxiety and who don't necessarily do this well. You're adding
another test.
Like, why? And then now we have to go, well, maybe they were having a bad day, or maybe, and I'm always telling people that the admissions officers are only looking at exactly what is in front of them. They're not considering context unless you deliver the context to them, right? So that's why we use the additional information section to talk about what was going on junior year, when your mom was diagnosed with something and you didn't have good grades or whatever. Then we can look at things from that standpoint. But other than that, and now comes in the testing piece, people freak out if they don't submit a test to a test optional school that aren't they going to think that I just didn't do well if I don't submit it? And what I'm always saying is they're not thinking. They're just looking at exactly what is in front of them.
Yeah.
So as far as that 2,400 land was a lot of work overall for the student and then also for the grading process. And then we had the essay for the admissions officers. So that goes away. 1,600 comes back, along with test optional being... So did 1,600 come back before test optional?
Well, it came around right at the same time.
Optional.
The mass test optional, yeah. I always think of COVID as an accelerator in many ways. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of things that were happening before COVID really kind of accelerated during COVID, a lot of societal trends. And one of them is the test optional thing, right? Because Wake Forest has been test optional since I don't know, the early 2010s or something like that.
Wesleyan, test optional. Yeah. I'm trying to think of other schools that were test optional.
Yeah. It was this kind of slow-moving train. Right. And then all of a sudden we had a year in which nobody could take a test.
Yep.
We had 2020 in which especially if you were in California.
Well, if you were in Florida.
Yeah, if you were in Florida, sure, why not?
They never stopped, which I find fascinating. I mean, obviously they had different concepts of COVID safety rules and whatever, but still, they just didn't care.
Yeah.
The Florida public schools never, they always required it.
Yeah.
Even through 2020 and 2021.
And so you had this issue where different parts of the country were doing so many different things with COVID. California, obviously, I had 4 students, I think all of 2020. None of them ended up taking the test.
Yep.
And we just kept preparing for the next test date, and then they would cancel the next
Yep.
test date. And by the end of it, they were applying to schools and they're going like, I've never taken this exam. And so obviously at that point, the schools are going to have to figure out something. And that was when this test optional trend really like, oh, okay, so this year everybody's going to have to be test optional. If you want students who aren't from Florida, then, we're going to have to go test optional. But also, could this work for us in the future? Could this be something that we look at in the long run? Could this be something that isn't an emergency move because of COVID, is instead an idea for us in the future? And we're still in the aftermath of that, I think, on some level. You're still seeing schools who are now coming back and adding it back in, right? I believe Ohio State last year.
Ohio State, University of Miami, UT Austin. Who else is another required? University of Georgia.
Yeah. And so you've got these
Tennessee.
schools that have kind of come back to it. And it's going to be different based on different states, and especially public schools, I think. This is my personal bias, but I think a lot of legislators don't know how to measure education. And so the SAT was really, really helpful for them because they could point and they could go, okay, our school is getting better because our SAT scores for admits went up 30 points in the last year.
Right.
That doesn't have much to do with whether or not a school is better.
Socioeconomics has far more to do with it.
Yeah. And but that idea of just like, oh, I can look at that and it's going to tell me something.
Right.
Even if it's not actually telling me what I think it's telling me, I think is very appealing to legislators who have to sit there and try to figure out how much money to give a public school each year. Is our public school successful? Is it not successful? Well, we have this number. Whether or not you believe that number is actually a sign of success, not my place to say. I would say it's not. I would say it's not necessarily a sign of success, especially on its own. But some of these schools, I think, that are public schools, are more likely to go back to that measurement, especially in states in which education is considered much more of a number. Right? I think California is not in danger of that because I think California in general takes a more holistic view of an educational system.
I wonder if it has to do with the size of the state too. Well, I mean, Texas obviously, but I don't know if all the University of Texas schools require the SAT or the ACT. I feel like it might just be UT Austin. But I think what this is saying to me, and the picture that just came to my mind is like when you're looking at schools like in various townships in New Jersey or affluent areas of Michigan or affluent areas of California, when you look at those neighborhoods and towns and whatever with really good public schools, they're very well-funded schools. And are the numbers commensurate with the income? i.e. higher test scores, higher income areas, not necessarily with the person in general, but with the area and what they're offered at their school, meaning they have a better education anyway on the foundational level day to day, and then bring in the testing piece and they're more prepared. So when Dartmouth actually reinstated the testing requirement about 3 years ago, I want to say, or 2 years ago, one of the things that they did was they embarked on a pretty comprehensive research process once the test optional thing went into full swing. And what they were interested in finding out is whether or not not having the testing actually did a disservice to students from underserved areas, as opposed to, because you would think that requiring it was actually problematic. But for schools like Dartmouth, they felt that if a kid was coming from, let's say, an underserved urban area or a very rural area, places like we're talking about, the town you grew up in Colorado, like a place where like there's no SAT prep, there's no this, and nobody's doing it on Zoom, and you barely have internet access. If you're lucky to even have a computer, that type of stuff, access. They were finding that if a kid sat and took the ACT with no prep, let's say, assuming if you're coming from a place that doesn't offer it, and you get a 30, to them, they were going, this kid could cut it in our program. That says a lot about this kid's sort of organic baseline intelligence and ability to work in our program versus a kid getting a 30 from, a posh private school in New York City.
Yeah.
So they felt like, we're not really doing a service for these kids because they're not able to really show us what they can do under circumstances that, under those, I guess, regular circumstances that everybody takes the test and it's the same test and whatever. Yeah. I found that fascinating, actually, because to me, I would have thought totally the opposite. And I thought, that's really interesting. And they were also noticing that the kids that they didn't have the scores for weren't doing as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I don't know how many years they had that research in place, but I think they really were noticing that 2020 and 2021, the kids they were getting were not as strong.
Yeah.
With my 1270, I was not a brilliant test taker, clearly. I thought I was. Or I was not the test taker I thought I was. But so we move, California totally abandons.
Yes.
The tests
California
completely.
goes test blind.
Why do we think that they did that?
I'm not sure. I think there a lot of, when you start talking about why a school may or may not accept the SAT, or are they doing test optional, or are they doing test blind, or anything else, I think you're coming back to a lot of philosophical questions about that school's place in its community.
Mm-hmm.
So a Dartmouth Ivy League school,
right?
There are certain requirements that means, there are certain things that's supposed to signify.
Mm-hmm.
What is the role in the community of a UC Berkeley or a CSU Long Beach?
Right.
Because they're both of those are test blind now.
Right.
What are their roles in the community? What is it that they are there to do? And when you're a public school, I think that's a very different thing, because a public school has an element of public service to it. And that can be hard to remember when we're talking about things like trying to get into the business school at Michigan or something like that,
Totally.
Right? Where the bars are incredibly high.
Yeah.
But every school is going to have a different answer to what is the place in our community.
And California is such a diverse state, obviously. The pockets, a Berkeley versus a Merced or a Riverside or a Los Angeles or a San Diego. I mean, it's all so different. And maybe they just felt like, you know what, it's not worth it to have this measure.
Yeah, this measure is not helping us in the way that we want to meet our communities.
Right.
In the way that we want to meet our students, in the way that we want to meet the neighborhoods around us, the cities that we are in, and the state that we represent, essentially. And I think that's a different question for everybody, or that's a different answer for everybody.
Right.
Everybody's going to, and it will be different sometimes. I mean, you mentioned UT Austin, and whether or not, I don't know off the top of my head if UT Austin is the only one that requires the SAT, but it might be that the UT system is looking at something like Austin and saying, this is our flagship school.
Right.
All the other ones are going to have very different responsibilities in their community than UT Austin has in theirs.
True.
And that's a perfectly legitimate way of approaching it as well, right? We have this one flagship, and that's where we're going to, and also, UT Austin, you also have to consider just how popular that school is, right?
I mean,
like, I don't know how you could go test blind at UT Austin with 100,000 applicants or whatever it is that they're getting on a yearly basis.
UCLA gets over 100,000.
And UCLA gets over, UCLA gets a tremendous amount. And I don't know if that means that, if theirs are different because of the way that the UCs do their applications generally being separate from, the Common App and everything else like that.
I wonder if they just felt like, we can't deal with this. Like, it's just another measure of stuff we can't handle.
Yeah, it's just another way of splitting people into the groups and everything else like that. And I think for parents and for students, the important thing about all of these types of questions, I had an acting teacher once when I first moved to LA. I had an acting teacher once who would get questions in class that were, in retrospect, incredibly silly, but seemed very important at the time. Things like, should I spend the extra money on those headshot envelopes that are like clear on one side so that they can see my headshot without having to open the envelope. And so like I might be able to see like all of these little things about approaches. And the acting teacher called that mind taffy. Because you could chew on it, but you're getting literally.
I love that. I'm going to use that now forever. Mind taffy.
You are chewing this, and it has no nutritional value. You are getting absolutely nothing out of it. It's just an exercise for your jaw.
Right.
And I think a lot of when I first meet with students, and when I first meet with parents, sometimes as well, I think there's a lot of mind taffy because there's a billion things that go into this process. The only thing you can control is how much work you put into the test, the essays that you write, the descriptions in the Common App, getting that
your
word
activities
perfect,
and all that
activity
stuff,
descriptions. That's the stuff you can control. And in the end, somehow, the million of students who are graduating next year who want to go to college end up at colleges.
It's wild.
After all of that mess, after everything else, somehow kids go to colleges every year. And I think the more of the other stuff that you can put aside, the more of like, oh, what do they do about this? What do they do about that? Are they thinking this way when they look at my essay?
Yeah.
Is this essay topic too weird? Is this essay topic too, because a lot of students when they first come in with an essay, especially if they're coming in with an essay, they might be like, I had one student who was like, I'm very nervous. My essay is about firing somebody. Is that too mean? Is that a bad thing? And I'm sitting there telling him, well, was it justified? And he's like, well, yeah, he was like taking students away from, or he was taking clients away from this business that I was operating. And I was like, then it's fine. Like it's not, if something happens that you want to write about and it has a story with a beginning, middle, and end, it can be as awful as whatever if the end shows what you learned from this.
As long as it drives your personal growth and you're going to entertain me along the way. Yeah, there are a lot of off-limits topics talk.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, there just aren't that many of those. I mean, I was talking about like intimacy. That is off limits.
We're going to keep it PG-13.
Are politics and religion off limits? I mean, not really. As long as you're not trying to convert me, we're fine. I'm happy to know about your passion for something.
Yeah.
And that's so integral to a person's character and to finding community and all that stuff. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
So because you stumped for a candidate that I would never have voted for or whatever it was, I don't care. That's so great that you did that. You put yourself out there. So and I think with the testing piece, they're putting themselves out there. It's that additional level of effort. And there's always the question, do you think they're going to care that I took it X number of times? First of all, and it is very complicated, because some schools are going to see all of your scores. Mm-hmm. Some schools are only going to see your super score. Some schools are going to see this sort of weirdly truncated super score situation where you picked the highest set. I don't know, it's very weird.
Yeah, but your highest one test.
Right.
Yeah.
The highest one test, exactly. They're not going to see all the tests, and then there's the super score where you get the highest scores in different. So that's really tricky because some schools want something and some schools don't want and they're like, what if? And my attitude is, you took that test 5 times. Show all the scores. Show all the scores. Don't worry about it. Because they might be going, well, University of Wisconsin doesn't do score choice or doesn't do this, and they're going to see all my scores. Great. Then they're going to know that you got your ass out of bed and did this a lot. Yeah. And you really cared.
Yeah.
But my score didn't go up that much. Even better. Even better. So the 1600 becomes the new SAT. Mm-hmm. What does that change? That's what we're taking now. They still call the new SAT. It's not really the new SAT.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's a station here in Los Angeles called Alt 98.7. They call themselves the New Alternative, and they've been that thing for like 6 years now or something like that. I'm like, okay, guys, you also don't play any songs after 2012, so new is sorry, that's a side rant. The new test, the new out of 1600 test. There's a few different changes to
Okay.
it. The biggest one is that it is adaptive. And so what that means is that since you're taking it on a computer, now I guess we should start with that one actually.
Yeah,
It's all computer. It's all on the
okay.
computer.
And now you use your own computer.
You can use your own computer. There are also testing sites that will have options that will have ones that you could use there as well. So
You download.
the program's called Blue Book. It's the College Board's program. Many students will be familiar with it already because I believe APs run through Blue Book as well.
Okay.
So for many students already have it on their computer somewhere at least. And it's actually really great because on Blue Book they also have 6 different practice tests on there. So you can go into Blue Book and just take a practice test as well. So it's all digitized now. It's all administered via computer. And because of that, it can now be adaptive. And so what that means is that you have two sections, essentially. You have the English and I don't know what you would call it, critical reading, essentially, section, the English and reading section. And then you have the math section.
We still have grammar.
Yes, there is still grammar in there. There is still some grammar in there. And so you have those 2 sections. And then within those sections, you have 2 modules. You take the first module. The first module is kind of a spread of the difficulty levels. So you got some easy problems, you got some more difficult problems, it's kind of spread out that way. And then how you do on that first module determines the second module that you get. So if you crush that first module, if you do really, really well on it, you're going to get a very difficult second module. The difficulty level is going to be ramped up.
So do you know when you're taking that second module, you're like, uh-oh.
When you are done with that second module, you could probably figure out. Yeah. Not when you're doing it, because there are still easy problems in the second module. And I've had some students who the first time that they take an adaptive practice test, they like, I thought I failed the first section because like the first 4 problems in section 2 were so easy. It doesn't shoot immediately to like the final question on Millionaire or anything like that. It doesn't go all the way, to the top.
Can I
at that
phone
point.
a friend?
Yeah, exactly. I would love a 50-50 option on the SAT. that would
would
work
be great.
perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah. But it doesn't go straight to that. And so it's, again, a little bit of mind taffy to try to figure it out as you're doing it.
Right.
Because it doesn't matter. Just get the problem right that's in front of you. But yeah, when you're done, if you did number 22 in the math section, like the hardest math problem in like 15 seconds, that's not a great sign for how you did in the first section. Maybe you just liked number 22. Maybe you just saw the trick to it immediately and solved it and it was super easy. That's also possible. But but none of that matters till you're done with the test anyway. So the second module can be kind of easy, medium, difficult, depending on how you did on the first module.
Got it.
And that first module then kind of determines the scoring is now much more of a black box because of the way that they do it now, because of that adaptive nature of it. It's not quite as simple to tell you, oh, you got this many wrong, therefore you will get this score.
Right.
Because it kind of depends a little bit on where you got them wrong. Not that one problem is worth more than the other, but a student who gets every problem right in the first section and gets the hardest second section and then misses every problem in the second section will still score slightly higher than a student that got every problem wrong in the first section, got an easy second section, and aced that one. It's not something, I don't know that there's a specific equation that we know for what that means in terms of numbers, but there is a little bit of a difference now. You really want to do well in the first section. Even if that means you get a really hard second section and maybe miss a few more problems than you're used to missing, still fine, because that first section kind of the way that I think about it, and this is an oversimplification obviously, but when you're done with the first section, basically it has changed the range of your potential scores. If you fail,
so it bumps you up to a certain area, and that's a new start. And
if
then
you completely fail the first section, if you miss everything, you can't get above like a 550 maybe or something like that.
Right, in that section.
If you crush the first section, you probably can't get below a 550, 600-ish if you crush that first section. And so it's kind of like, it's almost like it's moving the window a little bit. And then you get to the second section and the window then closes towards the score that you're actually getting.
And I've actually heard that some schools only look at a range. That's another sort of piece of gossip, or it's lore, not sure. But that there's they're looking to see whether you're in the 1400 to 1600 range or so that's interesting.
If you get a 1450 on a test, first of all, very good job. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Very well done. Well done. But secondly, there is no appreciable difference between getting a 1450 on a test and a 1460 or a 1470 or a 1430. That's probably a problem, right? And so
mind taffy.
Yeah, like that. Those little differences there. Now, the range thing makes a lot more sense for a school to look at.
Yeah.
And if you're hearing that that's something that they're looking more at, that makes a ton more sense, really, because you talk about, a kind of a one-off testing situation, right? Maybe the marching band started rehearsing outside the classroom window in the last 5 minutes of the last math section, right? Maybe I had one student who this year was taking the test, and the young woman in front of him threw up. Like, she was so nervous that she threw up. How are you going to expect that kid to get a 1400 on that test, right? Like, you're dealing with what? And I think schools and I think schools know that.
That's so hilarious. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, they just got super nervous, and
towards the end of the test,
it was early in the test, and so like they had to kind of deal with it and figure everything. Like, it became this.
Does the clock stop at that point? Like, what happens?
I think they stopped the clock. I think they paused everything and took care of whatever they had to take care of, and kept going. But it's one of those things you just kind of like. And
I don't know why I think this is hilarious, but maybe I just need more entertainment in my life.
No, it was. I laughed for a day after hearing it, but I think that like one of the things that students should remember, and parents as well, maybe more so parents than students, is that yes, there are numbers, but these are being read by human beings as well, and when they hear things like that, they don't think like, well, and too bad, let's throw this one out.
Right.
Like they get it. They know that this is a one-off situation. They know weird things happen in one-off situations. And sometimes those weird things are completely disruptive, and we should probably just cancel the entire score, like in that situation.
Right.
And sometimes it might literally be somebody in front of you being super annoying, tapping their thing, and because of that, it took you a couple extra seconds to focus, and therefore you didn't get the time on 22 that you wanted, and now you have a 1450 rather than a 1460. Right? It could be something as small as that. And the folks who look at these scores and the folks in these colleges, they know these things. They're not from a different planet. They know this stuff.
Right.
And so one of the things I often deal with students, both with the SAT on the test prep side, but also on the essay side as well, is just remembering this is not an adversarial process.
They are on your side. They are looking for reasons to take you.
Every college counselor I've ever met, and that's not like a ton or anything like that, but every college counselor I've ever met loves their school so much.
Right.
And because of that, they want you to love their school so much. And every time they open, well, I say open an envelope because I'm old, but every time they open a college app packet, they're looking at that college app packet and saying, can this student, like, I want this student to go to my school.
Right.
I want this to be easy. I want this student to be able to come to this school. And then they have to make super hard choices because there's a lot of great students in the country, and that's where
only so many spaces.
That's where all of this kind of, musical chairs of college admission kind of come into play. But it's not an adversarial process. The SAT is not an adversarial process. It's a thing on a screen.
Right.
It's a test.
No one's trying to hurt you.
You've taken hundreds of tests to this point in your life. If you're taking the SAT, your goal is to take many more tests over the next 4 years.
So true. Get used to it.
Yeah, this is what we do. It's not adversarial. It's not, and I can work with that with a student. If a student really sees it as adversarial because they're one of these students who is like, screw the haters and everything else like that. And
right.
Like,
well, and also the fear-based thing too.
And they need an adversarial force to be motivated or whatever else like that. Great, we can put it in those words if you'd like.
Stick it to them.
But for a lot of students, and especially I think the students who have a lot of test anxiety, I think it's important to take that adversarial role out of it as early as possible. This is not a test that is trying to trick you. It has certain ways that it asks problems, but we can learn those ways. It's not that they're trying to trick you or anything else like that. It's just a test that's written in a specific way. and we can learn to speak that language. It's not that you have to compete against the test.
Right.
You're not trying to, the phrase that I think a lot of people tend to use are, what are some tips or tricks that can beat the test? It's not really about beating the test. It's just about how do we properly approach these problems?
Right.
If you think of problem solving as a knot, right? What's the string that I pull in that knot that will untie it? What's the part that I can put my focus on? And that's the part that I can use to untie the knot.
Right.
What's the part of this problem, this type of problem on the SAT, that I can look at, and that's where I can put my focus in order to get to the right answer. It's not an adversarial process. It's just another test.
Mm-hmm. And as far as whether or not a student should submit their scores, I'm sure you get asked this all the time. Should I take it again? Should I this, should I that? I'm always saying, look at the middle 50% range.
Yeah.
And also the type of school that we're talking about here. So, and also your grades. So we've got a few different things. It's a whole recipe.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of ingredients here.
Like everything else in this process,
Right.
It is holistic. Yeah.
So is this score going to be something that enhances the profile? Does it leave it moot? Like, we're not moving the needle here. Or might it be moot to no bueno? So I think that if you are below, if their middle 50 is like 1350 to 1510, and you have a 1320, and you have mainly a B average, I'm going to say submit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that 1320 speaks to your abilities as a test taker and as a student, because a 1320 is a pretty decent score for a student who is a B student. And that maybe I'm crazy.
But it's
1320 is not that far from a 13. What did I say? 50?
1350. Yeah. And look, again, if they're looking at those ranges and everything else like that, if they're not setting 1350 as a bar, then a 1320 is a problem.
It's within
two
the range.
Problems away
Right.
from a 1350.
If you have that 1330, let's say, then you are still within the range. I mean, that is a student that they are accepting. You would be in that 25%. But again, if you're somebody who's borderline GPA wise, this could be a really good thing for you.
It's worth a shot.
Right.
Right? Because in the end, that's all that we're saying with that 50%. Mm-hmm. That's all that we're saying with our SAT scores as well. There's no SAT score that guarantees you get into a college, and there's no SAT score that guarantees you won't get into a college.
That's really true.
And so if you're at a 1320 and you're a B student and the range is starting at 1350, but you've got something for this school that you think matches really well, take a swing.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with reaching. There's nothing wrong with trying something like that.
At what point do you decide to stop taking the test?
November of senior year. No.
Yes, technically, that's probably when you should.
Yeah. There's a couple different ways of looking at that. It really depends on the student. If a student has prepared for the first time that they take the test and they've done very poorly, mm-hmm. and they did not improve much in that first time.
From the PSAT or the pre-ACT or whatever.
From the PSAT or from a practice test. Very often I have students take practice tests very early in our time together, mm-hmm. just to see generally where we're starting from. If they haven't improved very much after a full kind of round of prep, right? After mm-hmm. going over everything.
That's about 6 weeks maybe of sessions.
Yes, 6 weeks minimum at that point. And they take the test and nothing kind of happens and their score is already weak. And for weak in this context, based on what we're seeing today, that might be a 1200 or mm-hmm. less. I would then have a conversation with them about, is this the direction we need to be going? Why are we focusing on the SAT? Is there a school that requires it, that we really think, right. requires it, and we think we've got a really good shot at a 13 or 1350 level or something like that?
Right.
Or are we just taking this because our parents said we had to take the SAT because that's what you do when you apply to college?
It's funny. I'm seeing more kids wanting to do it and more parents being like, do we have to? Isn't this the thing that we don't have to do anymore? It's very funny.
Yeah.
Like, the kids are the ones driving that bus in a lot of respects. Mm-hmm. But what they need to know, and they always go, whoa, is that true? It's like, if you're dealing with a test optional school, chances are you need to have above a 1400. For most of the schools that we're kind of in the realm of what we're talking about.
For many schools, you're talking about a 1400 and up being a plus at that point.
Exactly.
And a 1300 to 1400 kind of being kind of even in a way, right? And for some schools, that's not even. That's just not it.
Right.
You know, Michigan, I don't know that I would send a 1320 to Michigan.
Absolutely not.
Right? So it's very based on individual circumstance and everything. But yeah, we are at a point now where you're starting to talk 1400s look good, and that's a number that I tend to circle.
Right.
1400 and a 32 on the ACT. Those are the two numbers that I tend to look at, and I tend to say to myself, okay, these are numbers that if you're above them, it can't hurt you anymore.
Right. This is submittable.
Yeah, this is something that is in range. Now, obviously, if it's a 32 and you're applying to, an Ivy, well, Ivies require them, so you'd have to send it. But like if you were applying to that level of school that doesn't require it, and it's a 32.
Wake Forest. Yeah, that's a good one.
Depends on the other. Then we, again, go back to that holistic conversation.
Right.
What is that 32 saying when compared to your GPA or anything else? But the 32 and 1400 are the numbers I start to look at.
Right.
And then a student gets there. And one of the things about, some of the students that I've had, and it happens more often than you would think, some of the students, they get a 1410 and they're like, good, I'm done. I'm out. And then that's it. They got their number and they're good. And that's great. They know what they want. They know what they need. Right. They've gotten it. I have a certain percentage of students, though, who once they get a 1410, no matter where they came from beforehand, they're kind of like, ooh, now I want a 1450.
Well, it's gambling now.
Now I want, because it's house money, right?
We're like, exactly. Like I put aside my $500 in winnings. Yeah. And now I just get to really play.
Yeah. Now I get to throw everything
I'm being responsible now. And I have told families that, we know we have somebody who's really bought into the process when they're like, let's do it one more time. Just one more time.
Yeah.
And that's a very exciting thing to see in a kid, I think, because that is a driving force. That is a lack of fear.
Yeah.
And that's really cool when they're like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. If they're thinking that way, and if they're not thinking that way, by the way, it's okay too. Right. Everybody has different reactions to this.
Let's be done.
Yeah, if they just want to be done, completely understood, you got the number you needed, well done. When I get a student who's like, ooh, but now I want a little bit more, now I want a little bit more, what that's telling me is they are placing this test in the right context. They've achieved this thing. They know they've gotten that thing. They know that no matter what happens, they've gotten that thing. They're not thinking about, well, if I take it 2 more times, will the college admissions officers think it's weird?
Mine's taffy.
Yeah, like all of those types of things. They've stopped thinking about that. And it's almost become a game. Yeah. It's almost become like, can I run up the high score a little bit here? And that is a healthy way of approaching those last couple tests in particular. When we get to that point, it's a really good place to be.
When you've achieved burnout, when a student says to me, I can't. I'm done. Also to the detriment possibly of their other classes. They might be stressed out. They might be a varsity athlete. There's just like literally no time. And at that point, I'm like, we're done.
Yeah.
We're done. We've got it. We'll use it for whatever requires it. And for some of the test optionals, if they're on the lower end or whatever, we'll use it.
In the end, the preparing for the SAT is optional now.
True.
It is optional. And I know I sound like I'm talking myself out of a job here, but it is optional. You don't have to do this. If you've got an insane school schedule, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that preparing for the SAT is more important than your varsity basketball life or your whatever program that you run after school, right, or any of those types of things. This is an optional thing, and it's helpful. I wouldn't do it if it wasn't helpful, but you don't have to. You can. There's plenty of schools out there.
Yep.
Some of the best. I mean, if you can apply to UC Berkeley, and you don't have to have an SAT score, the SAT is optional.
1,000%.
Because that is one of the best schools in the country.
Right.
And if you can get into one of the best schools in the country without having to do this, then we're doing it for specific schools for specific reasons. And I think it's making that choice that becomes the important thing here. Every time we have a choice to make. There is always that option of like, I am making it by rote. I am making it because this is the way it is done, or because I just is the only way I can think about it, or anything else.
Right.
If you are actively, affirmatively making that choice, what you are doing is, whether the choice ends up being the correct one or the wrong one, you're taking the control back for yourself to say, I am choosing to do this, and I can choose to not do it. If I go through it one time and it's a disaster and I hate all of it and my grades start slipping or whatever else like that, great. I don't have to worry about it. I can walk away from it. Making that choice, though, from an affirmative standpoint, thinking through whether or not you really want to do this, that's the first step. That's the most important step. Because after that, we can make stuff work. Because after that, it's just about learning how the test works, learning the types of problems, everything else. We've got tons of stuff to talk about in that realm. But you have to make the choice of like, I believe that this can be useful to me. I believe this is something that I can use.
Well, it's the same exact thing with finding the fit for schools. You really hit the nail on the head with that. It's like, I'm making a choice. Is this the one that's right for me as far as fitting with my goals, my philosophy, how I work, my vibe, all the things. And I do notice for the schools that do require the test, a lot of times there is some sort of pairing with like their philosophy and that, interestingly. And if a student isn't interested in diving into that, then maybe the school's not the right school for them. And that is so totally fine.
Yeah. I always tell students, I grew up a big Duke basketball fan. Grew up big Duke basketball fan. I know that's like half the audience is just turned off based on me saying that, but like the most hated school in the basketball program. Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing was I grew up a huge Duke basketball fan. My grandfather played on the Duke basketball team, and like
really,
Well, this was long before the Duke basketball team was good.
Fun facts, though.
But he played on the Duke basketball team a long time ago. Like, have it in my blood. Not only did I not apply to Duke, I applied to North Carolina because Duke didn't have a journalism program. You could have a journalism focus in your English degree, but it didn't have a separate journalism program. And UNC had one of the best journalism programs in the country. So I applied to the school that I had been taught to hate my entire life. When you go in thinking about all of these other things that don't have to do with you at that school, all of those things, whether it's parental, 5 generations of my family have gone to this school, whether it's where your friends from are going or applying to, whether it's a great social media post from one of the schools that gains traction for some reason. All of those are, I guess, can be considerations. But when you make an affirmative choice to say, like, I am interested in this school and I know why I am interested in this school, when you do that, it makes it so much easier to apply, first of all.
Right.
So much easier to get through the process and figuring out all of especially the essays and everything else like that.
The sell, I mean, on paper is like, it's just, you start writing and you can't stop.
Yeah.
You're so excited.
It's so much easier to apply for. And I honestly do believe that because it's so much easier to apply for, you become a better candidate for that school. I really think on some level, not on like some woo-woo, the secret sort of whatever else along those lines.
So it is.
Not in that way, but just, the way that I could write an essay right now about the 3 causes of the Spanish-American War, and I can write an essay about what DC United needs to do to win Major League Soccer's championship next season. And even if you hate soccer...
Could it be timed, and could I put it on your SAT?
Yes, there we go. That's what I'm going to use to get into the business school at Michigan. But no, even if you hate soccer, I guarantee you the second one's going to be easier to read. Because that's the one that I care about. That's the one where the blood is flowing.
Right.
And when you make an affirmative choice for a school rather than I'm applying to this one because everybody says I should apply to this one because I saw something neat about it on TikTok because X, Y, and Z thing, it becomes so much harder to apply, and that makes it a harder to read application. And I think it just lowers your chances to a certain extent. So, yeah, exploring these schools getting that vibe. And yeah, like you said, sometimes those SAT numbers can kind of reflect what a school is about on
and
some
what they're
level.
looking for. And if it's not, if it doesn't come with relative ease, and I don't mean that you get that middle 50% or that top 25 like that. I just mean relative ease as in, I think I'll take it again. I think that is, I'll say ease / enthusiasm.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of, it's not pulling teeth. Then you have a win. Robert, this was so informative, such a pleasure. I mean, I love spending time with you. I love talking to you. You're such an expert. You also you yourself are such a vibe. There we go. But I can't let you go until I ask you to admit it. This is the segment of the show where we ask you to tell the truth about something. Okay, so Robert, admit it. Do you think you made the right choice for your own undergraduate school?
Oh, for my own undergraduate school?
Yeah, where'd you go? Okay.
Yes, I went to American University in Washington, D.C. I knew in advance I wanted to go to school in D.C. I went on a couple trips when I was in high school that were very kind of formative for me in that regard. One of them was a journalism camp for journalism nerds, essentially.
I love it.
It was an organization that if you got a high enough PSAT score and you indicated journalism on the intake form as like fields you were looking for.
Right.
They kind of culled all those people and sent come-ons to come to this thing in DC. And so I went to DC. I loved it. We did a press conference with Marion Barry, the mayor of DC at the time. Oh my
God, the one who became a crackhead and ended up...
This was post...
That is amazing.
This was post-conviction, after he had gotten out of jail, gotten back out of jail, and was reelected mayor.
There's a good podcast about that, actually.
Yeah. He's a fascinating figure, and what I remember from it the most was the counselor or whatever else for our group wrote my journalism teacher back in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, and because there were like 10 questions that we were allowed to ask. 9 people asked about the drug conviction. And I asked about housing supply in D.C. because in the speech he had given beforehand, he had said something like, there's 150,000 people in D.C. right now. We think we can get that to 600,000 people. Like, we're going to bring people back to the city.
And you were like, where are they going to live?
That's almost exactly what I said, was, where are you going to put them?
Yep.
And the teacher, the counselor wrote back to my teacher in Colorado. I was like, he was the only person who actually asked a question based on the thing.
That's amazing.
So that I fell in love with DC immediately on those 2 trips. And so I knew that I wanted to that DC would be a great school to go to, or DC would be a great city for it. And then American was one of the only 2 schools in the city that had a journalism degree.
Yeah. It's also a great size.
It was
location.
It was the perfect size for me, coming from a very small town.
Yeah.
It was in DC, but it's in the very, very northwest corner of DC. So it felt a little suburban, but you were also a 15-minute metro ride from everything that DC had to offer. And the journalism program there was great. You had lots of opportunities. Lots of opportunities in student media. I ended up running the student radio station.
Awesome.
And being the editorial editor for the student newspaper, and all these different things that you could do there to kind of get a lot of hands-on training.
Right.
So I would not trade American for any of the schools that I applied to.
All right, one more. Admit it. What do you think you would get on the SAT if you took it right now?
If I took it...
Or the ACT. You can pick both or one or the
If
other.
I took the SAT, I would probably get in the 1500s, because I would probably lose focus somewhere and miss a couple problems because I didn't read all the way to the end.
Fair. Are you in the top? So we'll say 15 what? Is it a 1520 or is it a 1560 or is it a 1510?
Probably 1560-ish.
Okay.
Yeah, I would make a careless mistake somewhere in there.
And how many problems is that between 1560 and 1600?
It would depend, I guess, on the section. Like if that was an 800, 760, or a 780, 780, it's probably at most 2.
Oh my
per.
It's crazy.
It's
crazy. Sorry.
No. Once you get used to the way that they ask questions, you can't unsee it. It's kind of like learning when I took some screenwriting classes at one point. You learn like the elements of a Hollywood screenplay,
right?
And you can never watch movies again.
It just ruins it for you.
You just look at it and you go like, oh, this is where, here comes the inciting incident. Mm-hmm. Here comes the return to...
What's that book? Ants on a Tree. Cat.
It's Save the Cat.
Save the Cat.
Yeah, Save the Cat. Yeah, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so having taught this test for, 20 some years now, I can't unsee it. And so you give me a set of the questions there and I know what the right answer is. I also know what my students have done wrong before they've gotten the other answers sometimes, which kind of freaks them out a little bit. Yeah. They'll be looking at it and I'll be like, oh, you put A for this one, I assume. And he's like, yeah. I'm like, nah, it's D. He's like, how did you know? I'm like, let me tell you how I knew, because this is what everybody does on this problem. So yeah, I would do very well. Not because I'm that great at math anymore. I can't tutor a kid who's in calculus. If the student's in AP calculus, I can't tutor them. Like, that's beyond me now. But the way that the SAT asks problems, once you get experience with it, it's formulaic. They're not creative. It is not a creative test.
Right.
There are formulas for each thing. There are ideas on how to approach each problem, focus points for each problem that you look at. And once you know those, it's a much, much easier test. So
hopefully you can't unsee them.
Yes.
Once you know the strategies.
Once you know them, you can't see it any other way. And so, yeah, that's why I think I would do all right on the test today, would be for that reason.
Well, on that note, we have an SAT waiting for you right here in real time. Thank you so much, Robert. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna see how this goes. Is it Mind Taffy? Or is it the real thing? Thank you so much for being on Admit It with Alexis White. I have a feeling we're going to be doing this again. Thanks for tuning in to Admit It with Alexis White. If you're working on your college applications and want guidance every step of the way, visit alexiscollegeexpert.com to find resources and support tailored for you. For even more tips, stories, and college insights, make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram @collegeexpert. Until next time, good luck, and remember, you don't have to do this alone.